The quill trembled in Tyrion Lannister's swollen fingers as he finished his third letter of the night. Ink blotched like tiny bruises across the parchment, matching the fresh purpling around his right eye. A parting gift from one of Sir Boros Blount's gauntleted fists. The Kingsguard had apologized, of course, but not until after the visor rang against bone. Tyrion suspected the apology had more to do with bruised knuckles than bruised pride. A Lannister's bones were harder than most men expected. The wax pooled against the Lannister lion and hissed where it dripped onto the low flame of the brazier. Tyrion pressed his seal, waited for the red wax to cool, and then handed the letter to Podrick Payne. The boy stood rigid, face flushed and eyes darting about the dim council chamber, as if expecting Lord Tywin to step from the shadows at any moment and demand to know what secrets passed so late. Anxious puppy, Tyrion thought, yet a loyal one. Deliver that to Maester Franken in secret, Tyrion whispered. And Pod. No one else's eyes. Podrick nodded, swallowed, and pocketed the letter beneath two long sleeves. He hesitated, chewing on words, then blurted them anyway. My lord Sir Bronn has a ship ready. She sails with tomorrow's tide. Tyrion studied the candle flames quivering inside their iron cages. Across the narrow desk, the hand's heavy chair, no longer his, loomed like a gaped-jawed lion, empty yet full of accusation. Tywin had returned from Harrenhal 2 moons past, and reclaimed his seat at the council, leaving Tyrion to shuffle papers, stare at walls, and count the number of guards shadowing his every footstep. Good, he said at last. Tell Bronn we sail at dawn. Pack only what you can carry, and keep quiet tongues. Gold cloaks have long ears where they ought not. Podrick hurried away. The door closed with a timid snick. Tyrion poured wine, though his hands shook enough that half sloshed onto the table. He lifted the goblet anyway and drank deep. Arbor Red chased away the tremor and encouraged the warm lie that courage lived somewhere in the cup's dark heart. Across 1,000 leagues of night, the sea pounded the shores of Essos. He pictured the water, black as the silk his sister favored, sweeping him far from the stink of court intrigue and into the unknown. The unknown held dragons, so rumor claimed. Dragons, and a silver-haired queen who had once walked unburnt from a pyre. Some said she commanded only desert ruffians. Others whispered of unsullied spears and warlocks bound in chains. But the most persistent rumor, one Varys himself had murmured on a night thick with conspiratorial wine, was that Daenerys Targaryen possessed a vision larger than mere crowns. A woman with vision, Tyrion mused, lifting his goblet in silent salute. 7. Save me from women with vision. Yet here he was, planning a treason that could only be called mad. Abandon King's Landing, throw his lot with dragons, and offer his wits to a girl half his age who had never seen Westeros. Offer them freely? No, Tyrion's wits were never free. Even so, dragons seldom needed mints to mask sulphurous breath. The thought made him laugh. And coughing, he laughed harder, waving away the shadows creeping from the corners. When the laughter subsided, wine tears streaked his beard and the candles burned lower. He dabbed his eyes, set quill to parchment, and drafted one final note. A short farewell to Shay. No sign of endearment adorned it. No sweet foolishness. Sentiment was a luxury for taller men. He warned her to sail east with the first paying patron whose purse outweighed his belly, to forget the imp and his promises, and to keep that golden hair coiled beneath a scarf until she stood on grounds where Lannister lions roared only in storybooks. He sprinkled sand, blew the page dry, and folded it atop the others. When Tyrion at last left the council chamber, dawn's gray claws were scratching across the horizon. The city outside smelled of fish-steamed river fog and night-soaked gutters, almost pleasant compared with daylight's reek of horse dung and sweat. He slipped through back alleys on Bronn's arm, cloaked in a drab hood that smelled of mildew. They reached the docks before the first city bell rang, and Bronn's newly purchased cog, Maiden's Shame, rocked in her berth like a sullen drunkard. Red sails? Tyrion asked in disbelief. Red hides wine stains, Bronn said. And blood. Charming. What's her name again? Captain says it was Maiden's Dream once. A cracked board changed the EID. Tyrion barked a laugh. Let us hope the gods find humor in honest mistakes. Podrick scrambled up the gangway behind them, carrying a satchel near bursting. Bronze men whirled lines and hoisted sails, and soon the maiden crept from the Blackwater's dark maw into dawn-lit waters. Tyrion watched the Red Keep recede, its towers bleeding light as the sun breached the clouds. Somewhere high above, his sister would be waking, perhaps already scheming how to frame him for some new petty treason. How surprised she'd be to learn he'd chosen a grander one. He raised his cup of watered wine toward the distant cliff and murmured, "Valar Morghulis, dear Cersei. Some balls are too big for even you to juggle." The wind caught the sails then, and King's Landing fell away like a bad joke. Illyrio Mopatis greeted them beneath pent-roofed overhangs of Pentos's fattest manse, silk sleeves fluttering like banners in a light southerly breeze. He offered oranges, perfumed water, and honeyed walnut cakes. Tyrion accepted the water, left the rest to Podrick, and limped beside the Magister through mosaic halls echoing with courtesan laughter. "So, the rumor of your departure preceded you?" Illyrio purred. "Varys writes that King's Landing is poor without you." "King's Landing has my father," Tyrion said. "It is poor enough." They paused before a fountain shaped like 3 intertwined fish. "A Pentoshi symbol of wealth," Illyrio explained. Though Tyrion suspected most Pentoshi counted gold coins simpler. Bronn drifted behind them like an unshaven shadow. "My coin paid for your voyage," Illyrio said. "Yet there will be recompense. Queen Daenerys needs counselors versed in Westerosi intrigue. Your tongue is barbed, your wit sharpened iron. She appreciates iron. No. Does she appreciate dwarfs? She hungers for friends more than stature," Illyrio said. 3 dragons do not make a court." Tyrion sipped water, gaze following fishtails that coughed clear droplets. "Dragons make everything else though." "True," Illyrio chuckled. "They make men eager. And fearful." He led them into a spacious chamber, curtains gauzed across tall windows. There waited a woman with sea-washed silver hair cascading to her hips. She wore a simple gown the blue of deep water, yet the neckpiece glimmered with tiny rubies dancing fire. Her violet eyes regarded Tyrion with calm curiosity, but there was something behind that calm. A restless heat, the kind found beneath dying embers rather than roaring flames. She was younger than he imagined. Hardly more than a girl, but rumor had not lied about her poise. Tyrion bowed low. Hat in hand. "Your Grace, I am Tyrion of House Lannister. Of Casterly Rock." She finished for him. 8 times, he said. "Recently I preferred King's Landing. Then I valued breathing." "Then?" She did not smile, though a glint of amusement warmed her gaze. "You have come a long way to stand before me, Lord Tyrion. Only a dragon is worth crossing a sea of men," he said, pleased at the line though he had rehearsed 3 times aboard ship. 3 dragons are worth 3 seas. I wish to be of use. Ser Jorah Mormont stepped from behind a column, arms crossed. He regarded Tyrion like a stablemaster eyeing a stunted colt. Jorah's pale green tunic bore salt rings at the pits. He looked weary of Pento's sweetness. "The last Westerosi man who offered counsel emptied our coffers in Korth," he said. "Then you should have filled them more fully," Tyrion countered, "and asked for receipts." Daenerys touched Jorah's arm, silencing further protest. "Tell me why I should trust a Lannister." "Because I am the only Lannister eager to see you ascend the Iron Throne," Tyrion said. He met her eyes and found there neither naivete nor cruelty. "The realm bleeds from 1,000 paper-cut lies. I would see those lies scab under your reign. You know Westeros well, as I know my own vices. Its houses, their sigils, their grievances stretching back to Aegon's somber wet nurse. I have served as hand and as scapegoat. I learned much while ducking the axes meant for my neck." "Menwand." Jorah snorted. Tyrion ignored him. Daenerys stepped closer. Her dragons perched behind on a heated brazier. Green Rhaegal, bronze-tinged Viserion, and scarlet Drogon, the latter nosing the coals, wings half-mantled for warmth. Smoke curled from flared nostrils. Tyrion fought an urge to shrink behind Illyria's bulk. Instead he stood firm. "My hand must be honest," Daenerys said, voice soft but iron-laced. "If you counsel me poorly, many will die. And if I counsel you well, more will die," Tyrion said. "Queenship is a bloody business." Their regard locked there. Tyrion sensed the hush of every servant beyond the screens, the scratch of dragon claws on stone, the faint drip of some unseen cistern. At last Daenerys nodded. "Come then, imp of Casterly Rock," she said. "Sit in council with me tonight. We sail at week's end for Astapor. I mean to free the Unsullied." Tyrion allowed himself a slow breath. "Astapor," he said. "Shall we practice your war speech? Or would you prefer a quieter victory?" "Dum?" Her brow arched. "A quieter victory. Slavers love coin more than whips," he said. "Perhaps we buy blades rather than bloody them, or make them think a rival is at their gates. A dragon's roar can drown 1,000 screams, or prevent them." Daenerys studied him anew. A faint smile touched her lips, quick as the flutter of a sparrow's wings. "You may prove useful indeed." The scent of the summer sea followed them down the Ileana's decks, a fine Myrish galley hired by Illyrio to speed their passage southward. Tyrion spent mornings in Daenerys' cabin, afternoons on the foredeck, and nights mapping slaver politics at a table strewn with trade manifests. Podrick fetched cups of goat's milk spiced with cinnamon while Tyrion and the young queen argued strategy. He learned she valued every freed slave's tale, knew them by name, and took each whipping scar as personal insult. That was good. He also learned her patience burned as quick as wildfire, which was less so. A conqueror required patience to hold conquest. Yet patience could be taught. On the 12th day, Tyrion presented 3 parchments bound with blue silk. "War by quill," he said. "Letters forged in the Astapori High Valyrian style, sent to the great masters from supposed Yunkai spies. They hint that new Geese fleets sail north to seize Astapor slaves for themselves." Daenerys unrolled one letter, eyes scanning the mimic script. "Misinformation," she murmured. "You would have slavers tremble at phantom armies." "Fear multiplies armies," Tyrion replied. "It also empties treasuries. Their bribes for Yunkai mercenaries will thin their purses, making them more eager to sell Unsullied to us at a loss, just to hire more guards." "Nemd sas." Ser Jorah frowned. "Deceit is dishonorable." "Slavery is dishonorable," Tyrion retorted. "I will not lose sleep cheating cheats." Daenerys tapped the scroll. "It is clever, but deceit must not stain my purpose. The greatest deceit is hope denied." Tyrion said, "Let the slavers see hope fading, and they will surrender their whips to preserve their hides." Later, alone beneath creaking masts, Tyrion watched Podrick teach Grey Worm the Westerosi game of Sivas. The Unsullied captain moved pieces with deliberate precision, brow furrowed as if each elephant or dragon carved from bone held real weight. Tyrion smiled. Strategy, he thought, is language. The Unsullied were quick learners, but even strategy bored the dragons. Drogon prowled the railing some nights, wings half extended to sample heady air. One moonless hour, Tyrion woke to shrieks, deckhands scattering as Drogon dove at dolphins cresting alongside. The dragon seized a slick body and erupted skyward, trailing salt spray and silver fish blood. Below, water frothed where the tail vanished. The next morning, Daenerys found Tyrion staring off the stern rail, still pondering the power curled inside scaled sinew. "You fear them," she observed. "I respect them," he corrected. "Fear is for what we do not understand. Dragons I understand well enough. Hunger and fire." She folded arms across a linen shift, bare feet damp with dew. "Dragons are more than hunger," she said. "They are my children." "Children grow," Tyrion said. "And bite. They will bite cruel men first. In Westeros cruel men abound," he said. "Ace do innocence standing too near." Her eyes hardened. What would you have me do? Muzzle them like dogs? No, he said softly. Teach them who not to devour. That too is a sort of muzzle. She turned away, gaze on endless turquoise waters. I shall teach them, she said, and myself, or fire will teach us all. Then, Astapor's skyline came into view like teeth rotting from pink gums, stepped pyramids mottled with mildew, harbors choked by barge smoke, and Argazaz's great bronze harpy squatting above it all. Tyrion smelled sulfur and hot blood long before the Ileana moored. They landed under parley banners, though Jorah insisted upon a guard of Dothraki riders. Daenerys wore simple riding leathers trimmed in copper. Her hair pulled into a single braid so pale it glimmered against the brick dust swirling off the docks. Tyrion rode at her side upon a shaggy gelding, a gift from Dario Naharis, self-styled champion of the Stormcrows, who flashed golden teeth whenever Daenerys gazed elsewhere. Margazo Lorak, a high master thin as catgut, greeted them with splayed fingers and oily compliments. Grey Worm marched 50 unsullied behind, shields polished to mirror brightness. Tyrion noted Astapori children scurrying barefoot along rooftops, eyes wide at the foreign procession. Negotiations unfolded in a pillared hall, open to river breezes thick with rot. Dario leaned upon a glaive, twirling its azure-plumed shaft. Jorah scowled. Missandei translated in tones smooth as riverstones. Tyrion perched on a high-backed chair near Daenerys' right, scribbling notes, whispering suggestions. Slaver descent began the moment Daenerys mentioned coin. Unsullied are not trinkets, Lorak insisted. Each costs a fortune in flesh. So does keeping Astapor safe from Yunkai reavers, Tyrion replied in Valyrian. Heads whipped toward him in surprise. He unfurled a letter bearing new Gis sigils, one of the forgeries, carefully aged with smoke and damp. Intelligence suggests King Grazdan's fleets sail north. Murmurs rippled like rats in walls. Lorak swallowed. A master without slaves is no master, Tyrion said. A master without coin is a slave to his fear. Daenerys lifted her chin. I will purchase every unsullied child you possess. She said. Soft yet clear, and the strong draw, Lorak asked. All? She answered, and I will pay with dragons. Eyes bulged. Tyrion nearly choked. This had not been in the plan. Your Grace, he murmured, but she did not look at him. Lorak hesitated, glances darting to unseen partners at chamber edges. 3 dragons? He wheezed. Drogon alone could burn this city, she said. Consider how 2 at my command would temper his fire. The slavers conferred in frantic whispers. Tyrion's mind raced. She is gambling more than beasts. She gambles my counsel. Yet the Unsullied themselves shifted, listening. At length Lorak returned. We agree, he croaked, licking thin lips. All the Unsullied for 1 dragon, the largest. He shall accompany us at once. Daenerys nodded. Then, it is done. The meeting ended amid exchanged parchment and shaken hands. Outside, dust devils whirled across the plaza where chained boys waited in silent ranks. Tyrion stepped close as Daenerys mounted her horse. Was this wise? He hissed. Trust me, she said. You counsel deceit. I counsel faith. Faith in slavers? Faith in freedom, she corrected. He wanted to argue but felt wind shift. Hot, metallic, like a smithy door opening. Dragons, he thought. Smell battle before men. Night cloaked Astapor in smoke. Beneath the great pyramid's shadow, candles flickered behind shuttered windows. In the plaza, the Unsullied stood heedless, spears at rest. Tyrion lingered on a balcony, quill hovering over parchment. Plans changed faster than ink dried, yet he recorded each twist. Historians loved tidy narratives, but politics wrote in spilled wine. A roar cracked the sky. Flame blossomed above the harpy statue, blackening bronze wings. Screams shattered the hush. Slaver palaces erupted in orange light. Tyrion leaned over the rail and saw Drogon, wings wide as nightmares, vomiting molten gold upon the great master's roof. Ash rained in greedy flakes, hissing where they landed. Below, unsullied ranks broke chains, spear points glinting in crimson fire glow. So she never meant to sell him at all, Tyrion realized. Another roar answered, Viserion looping in wild orbit, torching barracks. Slaver soldiers fled like shadows from dawn. Tyrion smelled roasted horseflesh, heard timber pop, felt heat lick his cheeks even this high. Daenerys appeared beside him, hair whipped by dragon wind, eyes ablaze. She did not watch the burning. She watched the freed soldiers discarding manacles, the children embracing newly freed brothers, the gates yawning to corridors of dark unknown. Freedom, abrupt and terrible, swept across the square like wildfire itself. You question my wisdom, she said over the roar. Yet my path is straight. Tyrion could not tear gaze from carnage. I do not question your will, he said. Only how many bodies pave that straight path? She said nothing, for there was nothing to say that Flame did not already. He realized then that he had become her hand, not to guide her from fire, but to count ashes afterward and make sense of the shapes they left. It was a task beyond any maester's ledger, yet he would try. For if fire were her language, words would be his water. That night, beneath a sky clouded by ash and embers, Tyrion dipped quill in ink and began drafting decrees for sanitation, grain distribution, and compensation to free tradesmen whose stalls had burned. He sent Podrick to muster scribes. He summoned Grey Worm to select literate unsullied for municipal duties. Amid the chaos of liberation, the civil work began. And somewhere above, wings beat slow lullabies to a city on the cusp of awakening. The weeks that followed were a study in tightrope statesmanship. Tyrion coaxed bakers back to ovens, slotted freed scribes into clerk stools, and drafted new laws under Daenerys' seal abolishing flesh trade entirely. Upon pain of dragonfire, a clause he insisted upon striking until she laughed and scratched it through herself. Yet the rumor persisted, and rumor served as well as decree. One dawn, as gulls circled the charred harpy, Daenerys joined Tyrion on a terrace overlooking the docks. Smoke still ghosted from collapsed granaries, but new ships bearing white sails of Korth had arrived with grain purchased by Illyria's coin and Tyrion's letters of credit. You spin wonders from ink, she said. I spin bandages for wounds ink cannot close, he replied. She leaned on the stone rail. Astapor is mine, yet chains rattle still. Each freedman recalls the sting of whip. Chains rattle longer than they bind, Tyrion said. Time will rust them silent. Time and, he tilted his head, recompense. A woman freed from chains does not eat gratitude. She considered that. Feed them then. Clothe them. Where shall we find gold? Mememao. In slavers' vaults, he said. Call it tax. Former masters will pay for former slaves' healing. A neat circle. That coaxed a half smile, then melted. And what of Yunkai? Let them tremble. Send ravens whispering that your unsullied march in a moon's time. Fear travels faster than horses. Her gaze followed seabirds gliding on rising thermals. And when I march, then I shall count ashes, Tyrion murmured. She turned sharply, perhaps to rebuke, but his wry smile diffused it. The dragons circled above, ink strokes on a brightening sky, each silhouette promising another question. Tyrion wondered when their answers would arrive, and how many volumes they'd fill. Coin poured from Astapor's manses, and with coin came appetite, foreign traders hawking dried meat, saffron, and spiced wines. Tyrion encouraged market fairs, licensing stalls in exchange for tents, cloth, and medicine. He hired freed pitfighters as peacekeepers, reasoning that a former champion with a club could deter more trouble than a wisp-bearded clerk with a scroll. Daenerys spent afternoons among newly freed families, listening, promising. Tyrion shadowed or preceded her, ensuring safe waters where promises waited. Jorah scowled but tolerated. Dario bemused but followed. Grey Worm kept silence but listened most keenly of all. One hot dusk, Tyrion found Daenerys alone atop the Harpy's platform, the great bronze head long since toppled. Ash streaked the view like grey fingerprints. Drogon snarled at his approach, but Daenerys stroked the dragon's neck, and it settled. "They fear me," she said. "Ace is wise," Tyrion replied. "Yet I would be loved." Love and fear seldom share pillows, but they can share walls. Fear outside, love within. She traced a scale ridge. "I have my dragons, yet I have no throne." "You built one here," Tyrion said, gesturing to the city. Fires had burned out. Blackened ruin now sprouted canvas roofs and garden plots. "A throne needs subjects. You forge them from mercy. Mercy bought with fire. Mercy's price is set by oppressors. You merely paid the bill." Her eyes shone. "Your tongue is eloquent as rumor said." "Rumor undervalues me," he replied. A laugh broke from her then. Genuine. Carried on a sea breeze, still hot from midday sun. Tyrion laughed too, though softer. For a moment, the air smelled not of smoke, but cedar and brine, like old Braavosi harbors. In that scent he sensed possibility. The shape of realms unshackled, of banners crimson and black snapping on Westerosi battlements. But shapes were fragile. Soon messages arrived. Yunkai mobilized sellswords. Meereen's great masters plotted alliances. Qarth's pureborn sent polite threats disguised as trade offers. Each letter weighed heavier than last. Yet with each new threat, Daenerys met Tyrion's eyes and asked, "How shall we answer?" He answered with quills. One evening, he drafted a proclamation. All children under 10 to be given one boiled egg daily, paid by seized slave coffers. Another scroll restructured city taxes. A third barred former owners from reclaiming property sold under duress. Daenerys signed them without hesitation. "There will be backlash," Tyrion warned. "Let them backlash," she said. "My dragons have broad wings." He hoped wings sufficed. Moon after moon slipped across the sky of a city reborn in crimson and gold. On the 50th day of freedom, Tyrion stood before a throng of tens of thousands gathered along the river Skahazadon. Drums thundered. Daenerys rode at the head of a procession of freedmen, her silver hair crowned with a circlet fashioned from the harpy's beak, melted and recast. She halted at a dais where Tyrion waited, scroll in hand. He cleared throat. "By decree of Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of her name," he called, words echoing through brass horns. "All debts owed by those once enslaved are hereby dissolved. The great masters will contribute 1/2 their grain stores this year to city granaries. In return, the crown offers amnesty to those who commit themselves to peace beneath her rule." Though cheers erupted, though some jeers hid beneath. Tyrion glanced at Daenerys. She met volatility with calm. An arrow hissed from the crowd. Grey Worm's shield deflected it inches from her throat. Spearmen surged. Tyrion's heart lurched, but Daenerys' raised hand. "Hold." She leaned to Tyrion. "On principle," she murmured. So they did not draw swords, merely parted ranks to reveal a gaunt man crusted in dust, one of the sons of the Harpy reborn beneath daylight. His eyes burned with hatred. He spat. Tyrion's blood cooled. But Daenerys wheeled her mount to face him. "You owe nothing," she said loudly. "Even hate may speak." The man shouted curses. He named her foreign whore, breaker of order, thief of sons. Guards moved, but Daenerys gestured again. She listened until his voice cracked, then said simply, "Build with me, or burn yourself trying to burn me." He spat again. Guards dragged him away. Later she found Tyrion in the council hall, still shaken. "You risk too much," he said. "I risk everything," she answered. "Elsie, why call it freedom?" No counsel swayed her from that axis. So Tyrion redrew strategy. Let her flame light corridors where quills could not. For each enemy arrow, he drafted a new appeasement. For each rebellious plot, he sprinkled rumor of dragons waking hungry. Mercy and fear, walls within walls, as he had promised. One dawn, ravens delivered tidings that Yunkai had hired the second sons and stormcrows. Dario cursed, then laughed. They forget whose coin buys our loyalty. Tyrion penned letters offering greater coin. But coin no longer sufficed. Only conviction, he realized, welded Sel's words to cause. He urged Daenerys to ride to meet these companies on open ground. Show them freedmen cheering, dragons soaring, children laughing unchained. Let them see futures bright as polished helms. She agreed. So, the march began. Unsullied columns, freedmen levies, Dothraki outriders, the queen on a white mare. Tyrion perched on a stout palfrey he dubbed Book, because the beast stubbornly paused every hour to eat pages of shrubbery. Along the foothills north of Astapor, they camped. Tyrion drafted speeches. Daenerys practiced none. Words are yours, she told him. Fire is mine. The stormcrows arrived first, bright cloaks swirling. Dario rode forth, and after an hour returned with 50 lances and a flourish. The second sons, slower, found Tyrion waiting with kegs of Dornish red, another gift of Illyria's vaults, and binding contracts sealing triple pay after victory. Some captains balked until Daenerys unveiled a small display, Viserion scorching a circle in sand with a single breath. The captain's quills scratched fast afterward. Thus armies swelled. As they marched east toward Yunkai, Tyrion rode beside Daenerys more often. Diagrams of siege towers rolling in his mind. She listened, though her eyes strayed skyward where Drogon spiraled. You think like a mason? She teased. And you like a torchbearer, he replied. Together we'll build a bonfire to warm Westeros. She laughed. He liked that laugh. Each night, Podrick set up a canvas desk under lamplight. Tyrion inked logistics. Feed quotas, water ration routes, latrine digging schedules, war's hidden sinews. While he wrote, he heard dragons land beyond dunes like collapsing towers, and freed slaves singing hymns to Misa. The melody carried across still desert, haunting yet hopeful. Hope. He felt it glowing, fragile yet fierce, like an ember cupped in palms. He, who had once drunk wine to drown cynicism, now tasted something sharper. Yet with each mile Tyrion sensed shadows gathering, whispers that slavers from Volantis raised fleets, that Marine's warlocks courted darker powers, that Westeros itself slid toward chaos as rumors of dragons sowed fear among small folk and lords alike. Ravens bore word of King Joffrey's cruelty and of Tywin's consolidations. His sister's schemes, no doubt. And his brother Jaime. Where was Jaime? When Tyrion learned of Jaime's capture by Stark host, he downed half a flagon of Arbor Gold and set Quill aside for good that night. But dawn brought new clarity. He served a queen now, not family. The game had changed. His pieces stood on sand-etched boards. Campfires painted gold across dunes. Tyrion limped through lines of cooking pots and patched canvas, nodding to soldiers, praising discipline where he saw it falter. A proper hand must walk among people. Smell their stews. Hear their gossip. Gossip foretold mutiny. Near midnight he entered Daenerys' command pavilion. She stood alone before a low table, where sand and stones marked troop placements. Yunkai sends emissary. She said without turning. They arrive at dawn. Good, Tyrion said. Let them present terms we will ignore. She glanced back. The lamplight gilded her silver hair, setting fire to every strand. I will offer peace. They surrender slaves and they keep their walls. Walls crumble faster than pride, he said. They will fear dragons. They will fear losing coin more. Then coin shall buy peace. She sighed. I grow weary of fire. He stepped closer. Queen, burning a city and ruling a city are two different tales. We must write both. She met his gaze. You never call me Daenerys. You never ask me to. Then I ask. A soft plea beneath the steel. Tyrion bowed his head. Heart heavy with sudden emotion he did not wish examined. Daenerys, he said, tasting the name like rare fruit. She smiled. A simple thing yet dangerous, for it threatened to topple the careful tower he built of sarcasm and caution. He forced a cough, gestured to the sand table. Move your right flank here, he said, shifting garnet stones. If Yunkai feigns truce, your Unsullied can envelop their swordie. She nodded, studying placements. You think of everything. Not everything. I leave dragonfire to experts. Then rest, she said. Dawn brings new schemes. He exited under stars. The desert wind cooled sweat on his brow. Somewhere behind him dragons rasped in sleep. Though dragons never truly slept, they dreamed awake. Tyrion lay on a cot outside his tent and stared skyward. He thought of King's Landing's twisting alleys, of his father's cold eyes, of Shay's laughter, of Podrick's earnest loyalty. He thought of chains broken and those yet forged, and of a young queen who trusted him enough to ask his given name. In that thought, he found reason to fight harder than for any Lannister gold. He closed eyes. Sleep came. Fitful, scented of smoke and salt. In dreams he walked stone corridors lined with dragon bones, and the throne awaiting at corridor's end was not iron but sandstone, warm and alive, pulsing like a heart. He woke before dawn, quill itching, words unspooling like banners. The story was only beginning, and he, the unlikely scribe, to write its fearful symmetry. A.K. The sun bled upward from the horizon like a wound reluctant to close, staining the canvas of Daenerys' command pavilion in faint crimsons that promised heat long before the first insect began its drone. Tyrion was awake well before that blush, long enough to feel the desert's chill linger inside his bones and to watch his breath ghost above the low-burning braziers. In King's Landing morning came with fish stink and cawing gulls. Here it came with silence, the kind only an enormous expanse of nothing could weave. He liked this silence. It felt honest. He sat cross-legged on a carpet outside his tent, parchment spread across an upturned shield. Podrick had polished to a dull sheen. Quill scratching. He drafted the order of march for the day, assigning rations, mapping wells marked months ago by wandering Dothraki scouts. He paused often to flex his aching fingers. Wine consumption on the voyage had done them no favors, and to watch the dragons, black silhouettes circling far to the east, where Yonkai's yellow walls smudged the sky. Drogon's wings eclipsed the thinning moon each time he banged. Bazirian and Rhaegal whirled close on his tail. Smaller, nimbler, still learning hide and talon games only elder brothers could teach. Podrick emerged from the tent with 2 steaming cups of goat's milk bright with cinnamon. The boy set one beside Tyrion and waited, hands folded, as though afraid a single movement might crinkle the parchment. Tyrion grunted thanks and drank deeply, savoring warmth that crawled out from his chest to fingertips. It almost masked the ache in his hip that always greeted dawn like an unwelcome creditor. Ravens came from the rear guard, Podrick murmured. One broke a flight feather and tumbled, but we caught her. Maester Caro is splicing it now. Good, Tyrion said, eyes still on the itinerary. A maimed raven reaches no ears, and deaf ears win no wars. He scratched another line. Tell Caro, he has my gratitude and 3 days exemption from latrine duty. Podrick nodded, cheeks coloring. Tyrion caught the shy pride and felt a spark of warmth wholly unrelated to milk. Pod was blooming. Danger honed some boys into hard edges, but duty was forging this one into something truer. A thin blade flexible enough not to shatter. A blade you could trust. He closed the inkpot, rolled the scroll, and stood with a wince. Come. Her Grace will want these numbers before breakfast, and I intend to spoil her appetite with them. The emissaries from Yunkai arrived an hour later, heralded by plumes of dust and the nervous shuffling of unsullied ranks lining the camp's southern edge. 3 litter-born nobles, each bloated on carpets of blue silk, descended like exotic pests upon the march yard. Behind them clattered a wagon dressed in iron bars, through which Tyrion glimpsed pale, beaten slaves fanning their masters with palms woven into fans. The sight set his teeth grinding. Daenerys stood at the center of the yard, mounted upon her white mare, Astapor's steel corselet gleaming in early light. Grey Worm and Missandei flanked her. Ser Jorah and Dario loomed close, each the portrait of lethal impatience. Tyrion limped to her left, scroll case tucked beneath his arm, Podrick just behind. The nearer he came, the more he smelled the emissaries. Jasmine oil layered over stale perspiration, a perfume war waged by men who feared the desert more than the queen they faced. The leader, a man swollen by both fat and arrogance, signaled his bearers to halt. He forced himself upright despite protesting joints, and bowed with mock solemnity. "Most radiant Daenerys Targaryen," he began in High Valyrian, "as syrupy as spoiled honey. I am Reznak Mo Reznak, humble voice of the wise masters." Tyrion almost laughed. The other two were known from Spy's sketches: Paul Treger, patron of the Yunkish pillow houses, and Uriok Zar, merchant prince whose fortune lay in breaching contracts faster than he wrote them. 3 liars in search of a bigger lie, Tyrion thought. Daenerys inclined her head. "Speak your purpose, Reznak." The man pressed fingers to sweat-glossed brow. "We come bearing generous terms of peace. The wise masters admire your zeal. They prefer trade to blood." Dario's grin flashed gold. "A pity," he drawled. "Blood tends to pay faster in my experience." Reznak ignored him. "My masters will release 100 slaves for every day you remain beyond the river Skahazadan. In addition, they will gift your army 10,000 bushels of maize and 90 casks of sweet wine, sufficient for the journey home." Tyrion saw Daenerys' shoulders tense, caught the faint inhalation that preceded fire. He stepped forward before the flame left her throat. "Generous indeed," he said, switching to Valyrian smooth as a banker's promise. "Yet a curious number, 100 slaves per day. Does Yunkai fear they owned so few they could spare?" Reznak blinked. "The wise masters are wise," Tyrion finished, "and surely know her grace's host numbers, near 60,000, counting unsullied, sellswords, freedmen, and the children who follow our standards." He let the figure hang. "At 800 a day, Yunkai buys but 70 days respite. We marched from Astapor in 20. A ripple of unease fluttered the emissary's silks. Tyrion pressed on, voice light. "Perhaps a more meaningful gesture would be to free them all at once. Then we withdraw to consider friendship. After all, maize spoils in this heat." Reznak's jaw sagged like dough. "All? Impossible. The cost of failing to do so," Tyrion said softly, "may prove higher." He flicked gaze skyward where Drogon's silhouette now glided, black against brightening blue. A collective shiver rippled through the Yunkish throng. Daenerys reached to touch Tyrion's shoulder, a subtle signal. He stepped back. She spoke, quiet but fierce. "I was born to end slavery," she said, "not to trade in fractions of freedom. Ride home. Tell your masters the only peace I recognize is every chain shattered. They have 3 days to comply." "3?" Reznak squeaked. "1 for each dragon," she replied. The man swallowed. Much as he wished to retort, no clever words could stand against the truth looming overhead. Wings wide, talons sharper than treaties. He bowed again, the gesture now trembling, and motioned his litter-bearers to retreat. The slaves inside the wagon did not cease fanning as wheels groaned away. Tyrion wondered if they even heard the offer, or if hope still sounded foreign to ears beaten deaf. He turned to Daenerys once the dust began to settle. 3 days is magnanimous," he said quietly. 3 days is for the innocent." She answered, "Not for the masters." He nodded. "Then let us spend them making war unnecessary." That afternoon, the camp became a hive. Tyrion summoned sellsword captains under a patchwork awning and laid out the newest double web of rumor. Volantine slavers massing at sea, Marinese envoys plotting to undermine Yunkai, a pox sweeping across the new Gaia's legions. None of it provable, all of it plausible. Sellswords thrived on contingency. When storms brewed everywhere, they tethered themselves to the sturdiest mast. For 3 hours, Tyrion spun tales of Daenerys' endless coffers, of Pentoshi grain ships inbound, of Dornish princes eager to exchange gold for alliance. By the time barrels of fresh water were rolled to their tents, courtesy of the Queen, the captains were fighting over whose company would guard her baggage train. He dismissed them and found Podrick moving through the slave pens, distributing flatbread Donovar's bakers had pulled from clay ovens at dawn. Each time a freed woman bowed, Podrick tried to lift her by the shoulders, insisting she needn't kneel. Tyrion watched with a pang. Kindness, he mused, was the rarest commodity in war, minted only by those too young to know its fragility. Grey Worm approached, helm tucked beneath arm. "Hand," he said, laconic as ever. "Captain," Tyrion answered. "How fare our ranks?" "The unsullied are ready," Grey Worm said. "Scouts report Yunkai walls little guarded on west. Sewer tunnels there too small for spears, but large for daggers." Tyrion cocked a brow. "And who would carry these daggers?" "Me and those volunteers wishing to walk as shadows." The captain's face betrayed no eagerness, only certainty. Tyrion weighed the idea. Daenerys' philosophy preferred open liberation, yet he knew that a single gate unbarred at midnight was cheaper than 10 rams at dawn. "Prepare 20, he said. "Not more. Shadows grow long when crowded." Grey Worm inclined head and departed, silent as smoke. Night fell with a fervor unique to deserts. The heat fled as though chased, leaving air so thin and cool it hummed in one's ears. Tyrion sat at Daenerys' council table beneath her pavilion lanterns. A sand map of Yunkai sprawled between them, pinpricked with colored shards. Blue for unsullied, red for stormcrows, green for second sons, black for dragons. Though Tyrion joked they might need larger stones. Ser Jorah traced a broad finger along the western wall. "Holes large enough for Grey Worm's raid sit here, here, and here. But once inside, they must cross 2 courtyards. And unlatch this," Tyrion added, sliding a chipped agate onto a model postern gate. "A rusted bolt, I'm told. Bronn would have done it with a grin." "Bronn?" Daenerys asked. "A sellsword," Tyrion said, half smiling. "Taught me the price of loyalty. 1 gold now, 1 gold tomorrow." "Your sellsword is wise," Dario said, lounging. He tossed a dagger into the map where it quivered beside the main gate. "Better than gates is fear from within. I can slip inside with the stormcrows, stir slave rumor of dragons perched on roof beams. Panic opens doors quicker than rams." Tyrion rubbed his beard. "We risk chaos harming those we save." "Chaos will come regardless," Daenerys murmured. She rested fingertips on the map's heart. "If there is a spark, let us guide it." Tyrion met her eyes. In them burned a resolve that brooked no argument. And still, there was a question, the same silent prayer he had seen each night. "Am I making the right choice?" Tyrion believed the answer lay not in counsel, but in time's verdict. Yet he gave the only easing he could. "Then we shepherd the fire," he said. "Jorah's men wait 2 furlongs beyond the east gate. When Grey Worm unlatches the west, Dario's fellows raise their banner here and draw garrison forces across the city. A horn blast signals unsullied to march. Dragons?" "Only Drogon," she interrupted. "Viserion and Rhaegal are growing but undisciplined. They burn too easily." Tyrion nodded. "1 dragon it is." "And if the bolt refuses?" Jorah asked. Tyrion offered a bleak smile. "Grey Worm's daggers become keys." Plan set. The council dispersed. Tyrion lingered, scribbling just-in-case orders on spare vellum. Field hospital sites, triage instructions, command succession should he fall. Should Jorah fall? Should Daenerys? He paused there, quill hovering. No parchment existed thick enough to bear that contingency. He set quill aside. Outside, torches ringed the camp like captive stars. From somewhere drifted the soft pluck of strings as freed musicians practiced new ballads. Children laughed around a fire where Rhaegal's earlier kill, a goat unwise enough to stray, roasted on a spit, war and festival side by side. Strange bedfellows, yet the kingdom Daenerys sought might need both to survive. A shadow approached. Missandei bowed slightly. "Her Grace wishes your company." Tyrion rose with a grunt. "At this hour?" Missandei smiled. "Queens sleep little the night before judgment." They crossed the camp toward a low dune where Daenerys stood, cloak snapping in desert wind. Drogon crouched behind her, eyes ember red in gloom. The dragon's breath gusted warm against Tyrion's cheeks, smelling of charred goat. "Your Grace," he said, bowing. "Walk with me," she replied. They set off along the dune's crest. Sand squeaked beneath Tyrion's boots. Her lighter steps barely imprinted. Stars spilled across the sky like shattered ice. For what felt a long time, neither spoke. She broke the hush first. "Do you believe people can learn freedom?" Tyrion considered. "Freedom is less a lesson, more a muscle," he said. "Leave it unused, and it forgets how to lift even a feather. Exercise it, and soon it lifts cities. Bendawal. Yet some fear its weight. Fear is the ache of new growth." He chuckled. "Gods, I sound like an old maester weaving sayings." She smiled faintly. "A hand's wisdom." "How fares yours?" he asked gently. Daenerys gazed toward Yonkai's barely visible towers, lantern dots on the horizon. "I want tomorrow to end without fire," she confessed. "Even Drogon feels heavy tonight." Tyrion inhaled night air, felt it cool his lungs. "If words can open gates, tomorrow will end in song. If swords must open them, we ensure the songs remember why." "Menderol." She stopped, turned to him. The wind tugged silver strands across her face. "You could yet leave," she said softly. "Ride west. Reclaim name and father's favor." He barked a laugh. "That path closed the day my father named me Embarrassment. Besides, father's favor is colder than the wall and twice as likely to crack underfoot." A silence again. She looked at him, really looked. Violet eyes searching creases time, and wine drew around his. "Then stay," she said, "and help me shoulder Drogon's weight." Tyrion's throat tightened, unexpected. "I intend to," he answered, voice rough. "We'll carry him together, and if he grows too large, we'll build broader roads." She touched his hand. Small. Quick, gone, then turned back toward camp. Drogon rose, stretching wings, the low creak of sinew and scale reminding the night of its place. Together they returned. Tyrion felt strangely lighter, as though some piece of his own monstrous burden had indeed shifted onto stronger shoulders. The 3 days crawled yet vanished. At dawn of the 4th, no white banners flew from Yonkai's walls. Instead, riders reported doubled patrols, vats of boiling oil ready to top every gatehouse, slave markets, shuttered and silent. Negotiations had failed before they began. Or perhaps they had never been meant to begin at all. Tyrion stood beside Grey Worm at sunset as the infiltration party gathered. 20 unsullied chosen for agility and nerve, armed with short leaf-shaped blades, padded sandals, and faces soot-blackened until only eyes glinted. He clasped wrists with each. Strange custom for a Lannister, but fitting. When last hand released, Grey Worm saluted smartly and disappeared into gathering dusk, a ripple of shadows following. Dario's Stormcrows broke camp thereafter, singing bawdy tunes to mask disciplined movement eastward. Torch smoke rose behind them, deliberate signals to enemy lookouts. "See, we march, we posture." Tyrion hoped Yonkai's commanders counted banners incorrectly. Throughout the dark hours he paced, quill forgotten, wine untouched. Every time a breeze rustled tent flaps, he imagined arrow whistles. When a goat bleated from the livestock pens, he flinched, thinking of slave alarms. By the 4th watch he surrendered to exhaustion and sat on a supply crate outside Daenerys' pavilion, where she studied the black sky. Neither spoke. Words now served only to pass what little patience remained. A horn blast cleaved the night. 3 rising notes, sharp then sharper, from the west. Tyrion surged to his feet, even as unsullied formations snapped to motion. Across camp, other horns answered. Sellsword banners blooming in moonlight. Atop the dune Drogon launched skyward. Wings thunder that shook sand as though giants walked beneath. Tyrion vaulted into his saddle, or attempted to. Podrick's steadying hand spared him an undignified tumble. They galloped with the first ranks, Daenerys just ahead, cloak whipping her back like a banner. The desert blurred in silver streaks, then resolved into the zucchini-green gloom of Yunkai outer fields, where dry grasses whispered under hooves. Moonlight kissed adobe walls rising before them, high but no longer indifferent. On western face, a gate gaped open like a broken ribcage. Fire flickered inside. Unsullied flooded the breach. Shields locked. Spears angled to sky. Tyrion rinded book at the threshold, heart hammering. Within lay narrow alleys already haylit by scattered torches, and worse, lamplight thrown by rooftop archers. Twang of bowstrings accompanied first screams. He hurled himself from book and ducked beneath a low archway where Jorah crouched, sword drawn. The night met his gaze. Gray worms through, but resistance heavy at second courtyard. Storm crows. Stirring mayhem in the Pillow District. Half the garrison peeled away. Jorah's grin bared teeth. Clever little lion. Tyrion snorted. Ride with the main host. I'll find a vantage. Them? He darted down a side passage where stacked crates formed a crude stair to a flat roof. Limp notwithstanding, he clambered skyward, cursing each crate's wobble. Upon the roof he crouched behind a rain barrel and surveyed chaos. Below, unsullied pressed across a courtyard paved in cracked green tiles, moonlight making them appear in otherworldly phalanx. Opposite, Yunkai's defenders, spearmen in yellow lacquer, poured arrows from balconies. Oil cauldrons tipped. Flame blossomed into shrieking towers that splattered armor and stone alike. Tyrion's breath caught. Fire consumed more than flesh. It consumed morale, and Unsullied, though fearless, could not stride through molten pitch unblinking. He scanned for limit of the oil supply. There, upper gallery, slaves heaving weights at Overseer's bark. If the slaves could be swayed, Tyrion weighed choices. He had no voice loud enough to reach them, but Drogon did. He pulled a small brass whistle from pocket and blew once, thin and sharp. Dragons, so rumor went, could hear a mouse squeak beneath a blanket. Whether true mattered less than the fact he had to try. For an instant nothing happened save the endless clash. Then the air heated, wind whipping Tyrion's hair forward. A roar, like the world's bones cracking, shivered every tile. Drogon dove out of darkness, black fire incarnate, and passed over the oil gallery in a blur. He did not breathe. He did not need to. The mere promise of him burst minds already strained. Overseers bolted, dropping torches. Slaves fled or cowered. A cauldron spilled harmlessly on an empty deck. Unsullied surged. Tyrion exhaled relief that felt like a decade leaving his lungs. Drogon banked, and for an awful moment, Tyrion feared he would unleash flame indiscriminately. But the dragon pulled skyward, wings beating dust devils through courtyard. Perhaps Daenerys' lessons had stuck. Movement to Tyrion's right. A figure in sellsword blue scaling curtain wall vines, slipping past daisies of broken glass, set there to deter thieves. Dario. He bowed dramatically upon gaining a balcony and tossed a bundle, an oil-soaked banner, into a brazier. Yellow Yunkai silk sputtered, caught, and burst into brilliant flame. Down in the courtyard, defenders looked up to see their own insignia alight. Surrender spooled across their ranks like a snapped bowstring. Shields clattered to stone. Grey Worm's voice rang clear. Lay down arms. In Lysine, in Common, in Child simple Valyrian. Hands rose. Tyrion sagged against barrel staves, muscles trembling. Minutes stretched as drizzle of resistance waned. Unsullied fanned through adjacent streets, binding prisoners with rope found in stables. Sellswords corralled panicked civilians into squares. promising immunity for calm. Freedmen replaced torches with water buckets, dousing smoldering thatch. Tyrion descended crate stairs, joints protesting, and followed a torchlit lane to the grand slave market at city center. He arrived to find Daenerys already there upon her mare, gray with ash. Before her knelt Reznak Mo Reznak, robes torn, jowls flecked in dusty tear tracks. A single cauldron of still steaming oil lay overturned behind him. "My city's yours," he wheezed. Daenerys looked more tired than victorious. "It was never yours," she said. "It belongs to its people." Tyrion approached her side, careful not to intrude. She glanced down. Their eyes met. Relief, exhaustion, a spark of triumph each felt but dared not grasp fully. Words felt brittle in his mouth. So he swallowed them. Sunrise crowned the horizon, time's cruel reminder that night, for all its length must pass. Tyrion blinked against glare that painted the slave market's scaffolds gold. Already freedmen were hacking chains from pillars, nails shrieking protest. He thought he had never heard a sweeter note. The weeks that followed blurred like pages leafed too quickly. Yunkai required more than liberation. It required recreation. Tyrion oversaw census scrolls, turning former auction blocks into registry desks, where freedmen queued for work assignments. Grain seized from aristocrats' storehouses filled city granaries. Tyrion rationed bread at 7 ounces per person, with copper tokens minted to track allotment. Ser Jorah commanded patrols to quell sporadic riots, sparked by slaver loyalists who styled themselves Harpy's sons, a name borrowed from Meereen's older insurgency. Dario's Stormcrows policed Merchant Quarter, extorting only bribes Tyrion approved. Chaos tempered under planned brutality, the unpleasant but necessary. Still, each dawn new graffiti bloomed. Bleeding dragons, broken chains, icons of hope and threat alike. Tyrion drafted proclamations daily. One remitted minor debts in exchange for 3 months civic labor repairing aqueducts. Another conscripted former tutors to teach reading in temple courtyards. Daenerys signed each, sometimes tweaking phrasing to sharpen mercy's edge. They argued little, though when they did it was over pace, never principle. She burned slower now, mindful of ash. In late afternoon they held court inside Yonkai's marble bathhouse, steam long evacuated by drought. Here Tyrion set a high stool for himself and a lower bench for petitioners. Paperwork piled until Podrick invented a system. Colored ribbons tied to scroll ends marking urgency. Tyrion praised the lad before council, earning Pod a blush not even desert sun could burn away. One evening, after last petitioners departed, Daenerys lingered beside the empty sunken pool. Her white linen tunic clung damp with day's heat. Stray curls adhered to her brow. Tyrion closed his ledger and studied her profile. A statue chiseled from moonstone yet trembling under human fatigue. "Your Grace," he began, but she lifted a hand. "I tire of being Grace," she said quietly. "Call me Daenerys." He inclined his head. "Very well, but only if you call me Tyrion when the ledger shuts." She smiled faintly. "Tyrion, then." She paced a long tile mosaic depicting ancient Valyrian ships, breast sailing a jade sea. Dust dulled their once brilliant pigments. Grayscale cracks. She murmured, "But some cracks reveal more color underneath." It took him a moment to understand she referred to Yunkai, not disease. "Cities heal where they are broken," he agreed, rising to stretch cramped spine. "But bones knit slow. Tomorrow we begin dividing farmlands among freed slaves. Let them sow what harpies once hoarded." She nodded, yet eyes wandered ceiling vault. "Do you ever fear failure, Tyrion?" He barked amusement. "I dine with that fear. It seasons every dish. I ask because I feel it now more than ever. Each freed city expects miracles. Dragons and chains. Simple story. But ruling is numbers. Stone. Hearts that beat slower than drum of war. And now?" He approached the pool's edge, voice gentle. "Ruling is minutes. Most cannot endure counting them. You do endure. Barely. Barely is still endurance." He kicked at a pebble. I spent my life being reminded what I am not. Tall, handsome, welcome. Yet here I am counting minutes for dragons. If history grants even dwarfs a stage, surely it grants a dragon queen a moment to breathe. She laughed softly, like wind rattling crystal. Perhaps. Her gaze settled on him. I am glad you boarded that ship. He bowed. And I grateful for not being fed to Drogon on arrival. Her eyes shone with mischief. Not yet. They shared a laugh. And for that instant, weight lifted from them both. Tyrion tucked it away, a jewel for darker nights, of which he feared many remained. 3 moons had waned since Yonkai's fall when the first whispers reached them. Meereen was marshalling legions, its great masters forging alliances with Volantis and New Gis. Grain ships from Karth diverted its sea, bribed or threatened. Worse, ravens from Westeros brought news Tywin Lannister had appointed Davin Lannister Warden of the West, and offered bounties for any sellsword captain delivering the dwarf Tyrion alive to Casterly Rock. The bounty smelled of Cersei's ink. Tyrion received the scroll in his solar overlooking Yonkai's central square, where laborers now erected a giddy wooden monument of a broken shackle. He read it twice, expression unreadable. Then he folded it carefully and slid into a breast pocket. Podrick noticed, worrying lip. Bad news, my lord. Old news arriving late, Tyrion said. He forced brightness. We have bigger dragons to roast. Which was true. Meereen's navy, dozens of green-sailed warships, had been sighted beyond the Skahazadon Delta, blockading trade routes vital to feeding Yonkai's swelling freed population. Tyrion convened council that evening amid the half-reconstructed amphitheater now called the Hand Seat by affectionate freedmen. Scrolls littered the stone plinth. Tyrion pointed to charcoal sketches. Meereen bets starvation breaks Yonkai before armies. We break the blockade, or this city clutches its belly till revolt. Then? Ser Jorah rapped knuckles on table. We have no fleet. And building one takes years, Dario added. Tyrion nodded. So we borrow wings, not sails. Daenerys' eyebrow rose. You plan dragons against ships. Yes and no. He unfurled a parchment bearing schematics. Balloons sewn of goat hide, tethered to wicker baskets. Hot air rises. Fills skins with flame-warmed air, and we ride winds above the fleet. Drop pots of burning pitch upon decks. Wooden hulls become torches. Silence. Dario's grin returned. Jorah stared at design. Skeptical. Daenerys studied Tyrion, awe and terror mingling. Who will pilot these skins of goat? She asked. Sellswords hungry for coin, Tyrion said. And fools who trust physics. He tapped the drawing. I did the numbers. With proper venting, descent is controlled. Worst case, they splash and swim home. Worst case, Jorah muttered. They're skewered by scorpions. Ship's scorpions do not aim upward well, Tyrion countered. And Drogon will keep heads ducked aft. He spread a second sheet. Outline of a night raid coordinated with tide charts. Daenerys leaned closer. Moonlight glinted off her cheek. He watched calculation replace apprehension. It could work, she breathed. We rain fire without risking Drogon in broadsides. And send message Meereen's walls cannot muffle. The sky itself obeys you. She exhaled, decision carrying. Begin collecting hides. So began the strangest endeavor Tyrion ever supervised. Cobbled fabric stitched by freed dyers into bulbous cocoons. Crude furnaces fashioned from brazier cages and bellows. Tether ropes soaked in alum to hinder flame. Unsullied volunteers trained to light braziers, to gauge lift by colored cloth strips, to extinguish sparks with damp blankets. Podrick managed inventory with careful ledgers. Tyrion tested prototypes at dawn, risking bone and pride. Once the first balloon drifted 20 feet and settled without spilling him. Cheers erupted like rainfall. Word spread. Refugees lined rooftops each practice morning, pointing skyward. Children giggled, calling them flying gourds. Tyrion laughed too, though nerves bit each time goat hide crackled above his scalp. 3 weeks later, the flotilla of 7 craft stood ready. Their hides were painted charcoal black to blend into night. Rope nets cradled clay jars packed with lamp oil thickened by pitch and topped with fabric fuses. Drogon, impatient, prowled outside the eastern gate. The evening they departed, Daenerys saw the raiders off personally. She placed a palm on Tyrion's balloon basket. "Fly swift," she said. He gave a theatrical salute. "And land softer than I usually do." The raid unfurled like a bard's yarn. Winds held steady, sliding them over silver dune waves and into the breathless dark above Marines anchored warships. Below, lanterns speckled decks, tiny stars to mirror the vastness above. Tyrion signaled. Pitchpots dropped, fuses trailing sparks. A heartbeat. Then blossoms of orange rose from 3 vessels in near-perfect unison. The explosions were more murderous than elegant, but wood and sailcloth do not judge artistry. Screams and horns mixed with the pop of rope as anchors were hauled. But panic had its own inertia. Ships collided, catching flame from neighbors. Drogon's roar split the sky, scattering what discipline remained. He swooped low, but did not breathe. Spectacle enough, the sight of him alone. By dawn, 11 hulls smoldered on shoals or burned adrift. Smoke columns painting sunrise with grays and ochres. Tyrion's balloon landed 2 leagues downshore. They trudged through tide pools smelling of kelp and victory. When Daenerys rode out to meet them, she greeted Tyrion with a fierce embrace that startled even her. "The sky obeys," she whispered. He found himself speechless, a rarity nearly legendary. The words returned only later, in private. "The sky may obey," he said, "but parchments will keep your kingdom grounded. Fire wins walls, ink wins years." She nodded solemnly. "Then keep writing." Meereen's blockade ended. Grain flowed anew. Tyrion improved river locks, hired fishermen guilds from Astapor to trawl the coast, and established a tri-city council wherein freedmen from Astapor, Yunkai, and Meereen, yes, Meereen, because even enemies had voices, met monthly under unsullied guard to air grievances before flame turned them to wars. He named the accord the Dragon's Scales, each city a plate overlapping the other, together armoring Daenerys' eastern dominion. But Meereen refused to fold without deeper wounds. Its great masters dispatched masked assassins to sow terror in Yunkai's alleys, and hired spies to poison water stores. Tyrion lost 2 scribes to tainted well water before captains traced the culprits. He tightened security, instituted random checks, and begrudgingly allowed Jorah to impose curfews. Rebellion, like mold, thrived in damp corners. Through it all, Daenerys grew into her rule, not just in proclamations but in posture, voice, the way she listened. In council, she no longer waited for Tyrion to condense arguments. She dissected them herself and then glanced to him for confirmation. He gave it gladly, proud as any father, though he was 14 years her senior, and about as paternal as a shy scorpion. Podrick joked she had learned to wink with silences. Her stares carried entire paragraphs of instruction. One humid dusk, as he penned revisions to tariff codes, Tyrion paused, quill suspended. He realized a full day had passed without thinking of King's Landing, of Shay, of his father's shadow. Strange relief washed over him, mingled with guilt and wonder. He wrote a note in the margin. "The mother of dragons has adopted a dwarf of lions," then blotted it out before ink dried. Embarrassed by sentiment, even on scrap. Despite progress, pressure mounted. Volantis threatened to embargo shipping lanes if Daenerys refused tribute. Korth's pureborn spread rumors that dragons carried plague. Golden Company agents whispered to Yunkai's new merchants of alternate destinies, under a Blackfire banner still dreaming. Each antagonist a string tugging at tapestry, he and Daenerys wove. Tyrion responded as always. Letters, plots, alliances of convenience. But one morning, reading over yet another draft trade agreement with the Spice King of Korth, he realized the tapestry had grown too vast for one pair of eyes. He summoned Missandei Podrick and a half-dozen literate freedmen, delegating negotiation drafts. Resistance pricked his pride until Daenerys reminded him that hands, even tiny ones, did not hold empires alone. They merely guided. With authority dispersed, Tyrion refocused on Westeros. Ravens flew west, bearing proposals to houses rumored disenchanted with Lannister hegemony. Tully remnants in exile, surviving Baratheon loyalists nursing grudges, even the Martells and Dorne, who still whispered of Elias' children slain. He offered future amnesties, marriages, trade favors, whatever coin purchased anticipation of the Queen across the sea. Replies trickled slow, but promising. Among them came a thinner scroll sealed with a mockingbird sigil. Petyr Baelish. His letter danced with compliments and veiled threats, hinting at storms within the capital. King Joffrey's cruelty, Queen Regent Cersei's paranoia, Tywin's failing health, Margaery Tyrell's growing sway. Littlefinger suggested common interests should dragons seek a less fiery landing. Tyrion read it thrice, laughter darkening each time. Baelish never courted alliances without a wedding of daggers behind his back. Still, information mattered. Alliances could be weighed later. He penned a neutral reply, promising future discourse. Then he placed both scrolls into the highest locked coffer in young Caius' restored treasury, beside a single strand of Casterly rock gold he kept for memory's sake. Some ghosts belonged in coffers. One muggy dawn, gray worms sought him atop the Harpy's headless column. Now platform for pigeons and watchmen. Hand, the captain said with urgency uncommon to his placid tone. Scouts sight banners of Meereen 2 days' ride, 10,000 spears. Tyrion bit his lip. So soon. They had hoped months to fortify. He thanked Grey Worm, dismissed him, and spent an hour studying the city below. Stucco walls patched anew. Market stalls bright with saffron cloth. Children playing ball on steps once slick with slave blood. Yunkai stood freer than ever, yet its freedom sat atop threadbare battlements. In council that evening, he laid choices starkly before Daenerys and her commanders. Hold fortress and risk siege starvation. Sally to open desert where dragons could maneuver. Or parley one last time for peace unlikely, but worth the breath. Daenerys listened, jaw set. She stood, paced, then faced them. We ride to meet them, she declared. They will see we do not hide behind walls we broke. Sellsword captains cheered. Yora approved, though eyes betrayed worry. Tyrion nodded, but later he cornered her outside. Meet them, yes, he said, but choose ground dragons' favor. Broken flats by the Skahazadan bend. Sand dunes there grant height for dives. We lure them forward, feign weakness, break center with Drogon. He sketched arcs in dirt with walking stick. She studied, then smiled thinly. I trust you. He trusted numbers. Their host 42,000, Marines 45, but green. Yet numbers seldom included heart or flame. Still, he slept easier knowing plan, not chance, wielded dragons next dawn. The march was brutal, though short. Heat swelled like fever, pressing sweat through armor joints. Tyrion rode book near rear, quills tucked away to preserve ink. Battlefield offered no desks. Unsullied marched expressionless. Freedmen levies sang, rattling shields. Drogon circled high. Shadow swooping across column, spurring joyous shouts. At midday they crested a dune, and beheld Meereen's army shimmering ahead, ranks arrayed beneath banners of Harpy Talon clutching whip. Tyrion swallowed dryness. Walls of bright shields reflected sun dazzling. But he saw disorganization. Mixed units, minimal cavalry screen. Overconfidence perhaps, or haste. Daenerys convened quick council behind ridge. Tyrion laid final strokes. Stormcrows to faint left. Second sons right. Unsullied wedge spearheads center, once enemy stretched. Dragons remained leashed until signal arrow carrying green smoke soared. Daenerys would ride with rear reserve to observe. She swung into saddle. First you pulled me across the sea. She said to Tyrion, handing him a small ivory whistle carved like twin dragons. Now pull me across the desert. He tucked it into sleeve. With luck we glide. She pressed gloved hand to his. With faith. The horn sounded. Sand trembled. Storm crows galloped, left under swirling plumes, raising folly of dust. Meereen's right wing answered, overextended. Chasing. Tyrion watched through spyglass lens salvaged from a Braavosi ship. Next, second sons faked a stumble on the right, retreating beyond small knoll. Center of enemy advanced. Harpy flags bobbing. The trap mouth opened. He inhaled, then nodded to Podrick. Boy fired arrow green smoke. Giovannis die billowed emerald spin high above. A second later, Drogon answered. Black streak plummeting into sun-dazzled foe, jaws gaping. Fire erupted along the spear corridor. Men screamed, line broke, unsullied poured in. Chaos blossomed, but Tyrion's heart stuttered. Drogon lingered too long over target, wings buffeted by rising thermals. Scorpion bolts launched. 3. 5. One struck membrane. The dragon shrieked, twisting, flame jetting wild. Another bolt glanced scales, ricocheting into Meereen's ranks. Tyrion blew whistle, 2 shrill notes. Drogon's head snapped up. He banked steep, sword. Relief flooded Tyrion even as new alarm flared. A bolt soared, aimed not at dragon but at Daenerys' reserve knot. He could only watch helpless as wood shaved with iron rippled straight for her. Grey Worm saw too. Unsullied shield intercepted. The bolt shattered, crushing shield rim against Grey Worm's shoulder. He staggered but held. Daenerys spurred forward, more furious than frightened. Unsullied wedge succeeded meanwhile. Enemy center collapsed. Flanks wavered, and Sellsword's pivoted behind to seal rout. Within an hour Meereen's army crumbled, survivors streaming north in ragged clusters. Tyrion allowed himself breath. Victory, yes, though cost unknown. Field hospitals rose by dusk. Tyrion limped between cots, cataloging injuries. Arrow pierce, scorpion gouge, heatstroke. Grey Worm sat upright. Shoulder bound but alive. He saluted Tyrion, who saluted back. Podrick assisted Maesters, running water. When Tyrion at last found Daenerys, she knelt beside a dying foal. One stray horse, struck by glancing bolt. She stroked its muzzle until breath ceased, tears tracing dirt paths on her cheeks. He crouched. We won, he said, voice softer than ever. I know, she whispered. I hate that I can still grieve. It means you remain worthy to win. She met his eyes, gratitude shining. Late that night, after wine anesthetized bruises and maester-stitched flesh, Tyrion sat outside his tent with book greys munching nearby. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent. He wrote by faint lantern, chronicling the day. The faint, the burning corridor. Grey Worm's heroics, Drogon's near-fatal linger. The bolt that might have ended a dynasty. He recorded numbers, dead, wounded, grain seized from enemy wagons. But he ended with a note separate from ledger. Scrawled across the page's margin. The girl with dragons is no longer a girl. The realm will reckon with her, or be remade. He stared at words till ink dried. Reckon, remake, 2 roads diverging like all choices that wrought histories. He wondered which Westeros would choose when her sails breached Blackwater Bay. Behind him, canvas rustled. Daenerys stepped out, shoulders swathed in light shawl. Couldn't sleep, she said. Nor I, he replied. She sat beside him. They shared silence alive with distant groans, quiet laughs of soldiers celebrating survival, crackle of campfires. After a time she said, Meereen awaits. And beyond Meereen, the sea. And beyond the sea, he thought of Red Keep, of gold lions roaring hollow boasts. He thought of people seldom pictured in songs. Small folk who tilled poor soil, small folk whose names he never learned even as they cursed him behind backs. Beyond the sea is a kingdom that forgot fairness, he said. Fairness, she echoed, tasting the word as if wine unfamiliar. He chuckled. Fairness. a notion rare as friendly Lannisters. She smiled wearily. You are friendly enough. That proves its rarity. They laughed together, more from fatigue than mirth. But the sound was balm. She touched his sleeve. Thank you. For what? For being hand. For daring sky. For making me doubt my anger when doubt spares lives. She inhaled. Father could not doubt. It destroyed him. Tyrion nodded. Doubt is companion to wisdom, I'm told. I try to feed it often. She squeezed his arm gently. Then keep feeding. For both our sakes. Moonlight silvered her hair. Tyrion looked away to sky, finding constellations he once traced over castle ramparts. Here they blazed clearer, closer, as if desert air shaved distance between men and myths. He wondered what new myths tonight had birthed. Podrick approached, hesitant. Lord Tyrion, messengers from Maraine's survivors. They asked parley. Daenerys rose. 8 dawn, she said. Podrick bowed. She stepped into her tent but paused at flap. Rest, Tyrion, she said without looking back. Tomorrow, we write peace again. He watched her disappear. Then he closed ledger. Peace again, he smiled, rubbing sore wrist. He had never known war could birth such hunger for its opposite. Picking up quill one last time, he scribbled under earlier note. Peacemaking is just war by slower quill. He set quill down, corked ink, and finally allowed eyelids to close. Stars still wheeled, indifferent yet witness. In sleep he heard distant roar of Drogon settling beyond hill, a lullaby equal parts terror and promise. He dreamed of towers not yet built. Stone melded with dragonglass, banners of red and black draped over broken harpies and bent lions alike. And at the heart of it all, a throne not of swords, but of open hands clasped. Freedom's seat, heavy yet borne together. When dawn's first horn sounded, Tyrion woke ready, quill sharp and heart astonishingly light. The war continued, the story too. And he, once called half man, now held half the world's ink in his hands. He would have to write carefully. Yeah. Cow. The morning after the victory at the Skahazadan Bend broke bronze and blue across the freshly trampled dunes, but neither color penetrated the hushed pall that blanketed the command pavilion. Tyrion woke before the horns, startled from a dream in which parchment sprouted wings and fluttered away, each sheet carrying an edict he had yet to write. Sweat slicked his hair to his brow despite the cool breeze. He rose, tugged on a linen surcoat that smelled faintly of lamp oil, and stepped outside into the half-light. The plain where yesterday's battle had raged was now a sea of dented helms, broken shafts, and the occasional flutter of a torn harpy standard. Scavenger birds wheeled high, hesitant to descend while unsullied burial details still moved among the fallen. Tyrion counted 30 bodies wrapped in narrow canvas shrouds stacked near a shallow trench lined with lime powder. He thanked whatever minor gods oversaw mathematicians that the number was not greater. The cost could have been catastrophic if Drogon's second dive had missed its mark. Podrick found him there, offering a steaming cup of spiced calf. Tyrion accepted, sipped, winced at the bitter bite on his tongue, and handed the cup back. Too much pepper, he said. Podrick apologized and hurried away to dilute it. Tyrion almost called him back. Podrick had become more valet than squire, adopting everyone's burdens. But he left the boy to his earnest fussing and stared eastward toward the banners of Maraine's routed columns. They lingered in the distance, 2 thin lines of color pressed against the horizon like ink bleeding through paper. Somewhere among those bedraggled spears waited envoys who claimed they wished to parley. He doubted their sincerity. Wars bred parley the way rotting meat bred flies. It looked like an opportunity until the swarm took wing. Yet Daenerys would extend the offer. She always extended the offer. Tyrion swallowed the last of the calf, pepper and all, and limped back to the pavilion. Inside, the queen stood before a travel table, draped with a sand map. She wore a simple riding coat, cinched at the waist by a silver chain, whose links resembled small dragon talons. Her hair, washed free of battlefield dust, fell over one shoulder in a single rope braid streaked platinum under the lamplight. She marked fresh positions with tiny jasper stones, brow furrowed. Maraine's scouts returned. she said without looking up. Their commanders want safe passage to discuss terms. They arrive at midday under truce banners. Truce banners make excellent targets, Tyrion replied. He cleared his throat and adopted a more diplomatic tone. Are you inclined to host them inside our lines or ride out? I will ride. She set the jasper stone hard enough to crack the crusted sand. I want the sandal grit beneath their boots to be ours, not theirs. He could not argue. Symbolism carried as much weight as steel with the masters. Then a half cohort of Unsullied, a wedge of Stormcrows, and Ser Jorah as bodyguard, he advised. And Grey Worm, if he is fit. She nodded. Grey Worm's sling-bound shoulder had not slowed him. He would deny rest for weeks. Dario slipped behind the table, sweeping a braid of golden beard from his eyes. I shall accompany as well, he announced, voice honey over wine. Tyrion suppressed a sigh. The man's bravado was a constant drizzle, never heavy enough to flood, too irritating to ignore. Daenerys did not refuse him. They agreed on the formation and the escorts. Tyrion set about drafting a single sheet of parley stipulations. Strict no weapons radius, dragon overhead, but at distance, 10 envoys maximum. He sealed it with the Queen's signet and sent a runner with white flag and escort of 2 quick spears, youthful Unsullied rehabilitating from minor wounds. Hours later, the noon sun hammered the plain when Tyrion, mounted on Book, trailed the Queen's column toward the neutral ground. His mount, contrary to usual obstinacy, walked docile under the weight of ceremony. Tyrion found the calm unsettling. Battlefields never slept long, they just waited for someone to whistle. The parley field lay beside a dry wadi, bordered by tamarisk shrubs. The air shimmered as heat rose, twisting the envoys' banners into serpentine blurs. Tyrion counted 9 riders approaching. 5 in scale armor tinted dull jade, 4 retainers in plain wool. At their head rode a tall, hawk-nosed man whose breastplate bore a chipped harpy crest filled with pitch. A political statement, Tyrion noted. The crest intentionally maimed to claim humility. Humility rarely sat long on Master's shoulders. Unsullied formed a semicircle 20 paces behind Daenerys. Spears grounded, eyes blank. Grey Worm stood dead center, face as remote as a shuttered window. Dario rested one hand on the pommel of a flambard draped in a cloak sleeve. Ser Jorah wore plain brigandine but no helmet. He'd removed it so envoys could read his convictions in steel-blue eyes. The hawk-nosed envoy halted, dismounted, and dropped to one knee. He pressed a hand to his heart and recited a formal greeting in High Valyrian. Tyrion's ears twitched at the accent. Noble schooling from Meereen's East Harbor Quarter, where old families hoarded wealth behind garden walls. Daenerys listened, expression carved from the same marble as Astapor's Plaza statues. When he finished, she spoke in the same tongue, crisp and cold. Rise, name yourself. I am Hizdar zo Lorak, he said, bowing. Chosen voice of Meereen until circumstances change. He cast a furtive glance at Drogon, who circled high above, black wings brushing sunlight. We come under flags of truce. Daenerys nodded toward Tyrion. Speak first to my hand. Tyrion eased Book forward, mindful of the envoy's gaze sliding down to rosette studs on a saddle too fine for a dwarf. Your banners are seen, he began, translating his own common into formal Valyrian for the retainer's benefit. State Meereen's intention. Hizdar unrolled a parchment tied with braided copper cord. We propose cessation of hostilities for 10 days to allow retrieval of our dead and negotiation of a prisoner exchange. In return, Meereen will permit grain ships to dock at Yunkai undisrupted. Tyrion accepted the parchment. Scanned the neat columns. It was carefully worded to suggest parity where none existed. Generous, he granted. Yet you neglect reparations for damages inflicted by your blockade. Hizdar dipped chin. Reparations may be discussed after casualties buried. A road runs both ways, Tyrion said. Your ships denied Yunkai grain. Yunkai's children went thin. He looked at Daenerys. 50,000 silver stags to the city coffers. Payable within 30 days. Hizdar's nostrils flared. Silver coin is scarce in Meereen. Then send bronze, Tyrion answered. Or jewels. Your city brags of jewel mines lit by lantern fish. Let them glitter in Yonkai's orphanages. Hizdar's composure cracked. Pride feeds no bellies. Daenerys cut in, voice low. Agree, or we resume war. The envoy bowed stiffly. I will present the terms. There is more, Tyrion said. He had not planned further, but the moment required it. Meereen will dismantle all slave auctions henceforth. Failure to comply will summon dragons upon your pyramids. A collective breath hissed from retainers. Hizdar paled. A bold demand. Bold chains breed bold demands, Tyrion replied. The envoy's gaze flicked skyward again. Drogon seemed miles away, yet his looming presence bent conversation like iron to magnet. Hizdar lowered eyes. I will bear it back. Daenerys signaled Grey Worm. 2 coffers bound in bronze were carried forward. Inside are ashes of the soldiers who burned your outposts, she said. I return them out of respect. See that you grant similar dignity to ours. It was a small gesture, but one Tyrion had suggested. Sometimes respect, like a drink of cool water, invited parched throats to speak reason. Parley ended. Envoys mounted. Hizdar bowed once more, an elegant motion marred by the tremble in his sleeves, and spurred westward. Dust swallowed them. Tyrion let out a breath he had not realized he'd been holding. That went cleaner than I feared, he told Daenerys. I smelled fear. She murmured. It sharpens peace. She wheeled her mare. Come, we prepare Yunkai for yes or no. They returned by mid-afternoon to find half the city leaning out windows and standing on roof beams to glimpse the Queen's return. Word of parley had spread, fanned by freedmen eager for stability and merchants eager for reopened trade. Tyrion's chest tightened, for with every expectation rose potential disappointment. He visited the city granaries first, tallying stocks. 14 days of wheat flour left, 9 of barley, dried beans enough for a month if water held. The cistern crews reported pumps running again, though leaks along North Wall wasted precious gallons at midday. He ordered sandbags, stacked to channel runoff into catch basins. Podrick delivered letters from Astapor. Former Great Master Krasny's had been stabbed in an alley, apparently by slave children turned street thieves. A power vacuum threatened riots. Tyrion cursed under breath. One city stabilized, another teetered. It was like playing Sivas with live goats for pieces. He wrote urgent counsel to Astapor's Provisional Council. Quadruple bread rations, post unsullied companies at bakeries, and publicly declare amnesty for petty theft, under 3 days' wages. He sealed the letter and hoped the ravens flew straight. Night found him hunched over a small desk in his chamber, a second-story room overlooking Yonkai's central square. The shutters refused to stay open, warped by humidity, so he wedged them with a broken spear shaft. Above the street, lanterns cast pools of amber light where peddlers sold fried chickpea cakes and watered wine. Freedmen laughter drifted up, wrapped in lute chords. From afar, he caught faint beats of drums. They had become nightly. Someone had repurposed old parade snares to accompany liberation songs. His candle guttered. He dipped quill, scratched at parchment. Drafting new tax rates for wine importers, he almost missed a soft knock. He called entry. Missandei glided inside, robes whispering. Her Majesty requests your presence atop the Harpy column, she said. Candlelight warmed her brown skin. She watches for torches from Meereen, an answer to the parley. Tyrion's knees protested as he stood. Tell her I come. He blew out the flame. The ledger could wait. He grabbed a cloak trimmed with faded Lannister crimson, less ostentatious than full lion embroidery, yet still a reminder of who he'd been, and followed Missandei down stone stairs. The column's staircase spiraled dizzyingly. Halfway up, Tyrion paused to catch breath, though he blamed the thin air. At the top, the platform buzzed with a handful of lanterns shielded behind curtained frames to preserve night vision. Daenerys stood at the edge, Grey Worm beside her like a sentinel carved of basalt. Jorah and Daario argued tactics in hush, gesturing at a parchment map. pinned under a dagger. Drogon perched on a broad ledge lower down, eyes glowing coals. Daenerys acknowledged Tyrion with a small nod, but kept gaze fixed on the horizon. He stepped beside her. Stars freckled the sky, bright and indifferent. To the west, no hint of torchlight yet. "Patience," Tyrion whispered. She offered a wry half-smile. "I've learned some." An hour crawled. A second followed. Tyrion's back ached from standing. Dario hushed his own conversation after Daenerys raised a finger. Even Drogon settled into statuesque hush. Then, faint but undeniable, 3 torch flares bloomed in the distance, each vanishing then reappearing in a slow triple sequence. Grey Worm's posture eased a fraction. "The agreed signal," Tyrion confirmed. He allowed himself a sigh. "They accept the ceasefire." Daenerys closed eyes. Relief radiated from her like warmth from a bathhouse brazier. When she opened them, the relief hardened to calculation. "We have 10 days," she said, voice steel. 10 days to make Meereen understand freedom is not optional. "Freedom can be written," Tyrion said, tapping quill behind ear though it wasn't there. "If the pen is strong and the parchment thick, then sharpen your pen." She turned to him fully for the first time. Her eyes, violet tinged by starlight, searched his face. "I need the best terms we can wring. Make them heavy enough that breaking them would crack Meereen's bones." He bowed. "You'll have them by dawn." Tyrion did not sleep. He returned to his chamber, brewed coarse calf, and spread fresh vellum. Each clause shaped itself with the weight of dragon wings behind it. Abolition of slave markets within the city walls, conversion of existing holding pens into free labor guild halls, quarterly grain tribute to Yunkai and Astapor, and a mandatory network of tutors to teach reading to freedmen children, funded by a levy on every pyramid house. Further, a hostage arrangement. Meereen would send 2 scions of its wealthiest houses to reside under protective observation in Yunkai for 5 years, exchangeable annually upon proof of compliance. He penned enforcement measures. Unsullied garrisons stationed at each city gate, their wages drawn from Meereen's treasury. Violations would be tried by a 3-judge panel, one chosen by Daenerys, one by Meereen, and one elected by freedmen whose families had known bondage. In event of deadlock, the Queen's voice held deciding weight. He wrote until fingers cramped. Candle stumps died and were replaced. Podrick woke near dawn to fetch more ink. "Rest, my lord," the boy urged. Tyrion shook his head. He trimmed quill, resumed. By first sunlight, he sanded the final page and set the stack beside an iron seal. Satisfaction flickered. A small flame fanned by exhaustion. He swallowed a mouthful of lukewarm calf, grimaced, and shuffled toward the shuttered window. The square already bustled. Vendors setting boards, water carriers hauling skins from wells, a group of free boys arguing who would race across the roofs fastest. Life persisted. He delivered the document to Daenerys in the amphitheater that now served as council hall. She wore deep indigo today, perhaps acknowledging the Meereenese colors. As she read, her lips moved. Occasionally she paused, nodding at some clause. At others her brow puckered but smoothed again. When she finished, she ran a thumb along the parchment edge. "Thorough," she pronounced. "Slavers rarely leave holes in chains," Tyrion replied. "We offer them none in the law." She signed her flowing dragon-shaped signature, pressing seal into green wax tinted with copper flakes. "Present this at the second parley," she said. Tyrion bowed. "I'll sharpen my tongue likewise." He found Hisdar waiting that noon, more anxious than night prior. The envoy's retainers unfurled benches beneath a striped awning. Wine offered, politely refused. Tyrion read the full terms aloud, enunciating each clause while Hisdar's face traveled from pale to parchment white. Retainers whispered behind hands. The envoy asked for amendments, reduce hostages to 1. Shorten unsullied presence to 3 years. Tyrion countered by adding a yearly dragon inspection tour, purely for spectacle. Hisdar nearly fainted. They parted with no final deal. The ceasefire clock ticked louder. For 3 days negotiations seesawed. Tyrion pressed. Hisdar retreated. At each impasse, Daenerys authorized mild concessions, but only in exchange for equal expansions elsewhere. By the fourth sunrise, Meereen agreed to dismantle slave markets, though they balked at formal abolition. Tyrion insisted on wording all forms of coerced labor for life. They protested, said ancestors would howl in their crypts. Tyrion quipped that ghosts made poor laborers. Meanwhile, Yunkai braced for betrayal. Unsullied drilled at dawn, Sellswords patrolled alleys, and the storm crows drilled with smoke bombs, an idea of Dario's to confuse any midnight incursion. Tyrion approved everything, though he scrawled mental notes about the treasury bleeding coin on sellsword contracts. 7 nights after the battle, a Meereenese galley docked at Yunkai with casks of coin, and 8 slave children offered as goodwill tokens. Daenerys sent back the children after dressing them in fresh linen, their wrists adorned in copper bracelets bearing tiny dragon heads. The inscription read, "Free now, free always." The gesture captured the city's imagination. Markets erupted in cheers. Bakers shaped bread in dragon silhouettes and gave them to passing customers. Tyrion predicted an economic boon as soon as the blockade lifted completely. On the 8th day, Hisdar returned with a new scroll. He called it Meereen's Final Acceptance. It lacked signatures. Instead, across the bottom, 9 blank boxes waited for the seals of Meereen's greatest houses. Hisdar promised them by the 10th sunrise. Tyrion handed the scroll to Daenerys on the Harpy platform. She examined the boxes, tapped the waxless spaces. "When those seals are set," she said, "my war is half won." Tyrion rubbed his swollen knuckles. "We must still guard against hidden daggers. Masters enjoy conspiracy as much as coin." "Ben?" She turned to him. "I need you there," she said suddenly. "In Meereen, ensure the seals are real and the ink not counterfeit." He blinked. "You would send your hand into a viper pit. I send the viper into theirs." She countered. "They cannot match your mind." "Flattery? No." "Strategic trust." Tyrion weighed risks. Meereen might seize him for bounty. Cersei's offer echoed still, yet his presence could anchor reforms. He recalled children racing rooftops, bread shaped like dragons, water flowing through rebuilt aqueducts. "Worth the risk." "Very well," he said. "Podrick accompanies me, and 3 unsullied for courtesy. Take Grey Worm." She said, "His woundmen's. Trust sits on his spear point." Grey Worm accepted silently when informed. Podrick swallowed but nodded. Tyrion patted the boy's shoulder. Smiled reassurance he did not fully feel. Preparations began at once. Small litter wagons carried sealed chests of grain inspection ledgers and copies of Yunkai's new codex. Tyrion packed personal items, a leather-bound volume of jokes, humor-bridged hostilities, a scaled-down copy of The Lives of 4 Grand Maesters, a corked flask of Arbor Gold for celebrations or sedation, whichever proved necessary. Dario approached as they loaded. "May fortune kiss you, lion," he said. "If trouble finds you, scream loud." He tapped the flambard. "I enjoy rescuing valuable cargo." "Rescues cost extra," Tyrion quipped. "For you? I accept payment in stories." "Then you charge dearer than most." Dario laughed. They clasped arms. Tyrion respected him more than he admitted. The Sellsword had proven fiercely loyal to Daenerys despite bravado. Jorah too shook his hand, murmuring, "Keep eyes open." Tyrion teased that Jorah spoke from experience. Men exiled for selling poachers seldom slept well in foreign beds. Before dawn on the 9th day, Tyrion's small caravan clattered through Yunkai's north gate. Daenerys watched from the parapet. Drogon coiled behind her, wings half raised as if reluctantly letting prey escape. Tyrion saluted with his walking stick. She lifted a hand. A wave. A benediction. Maybe both. They traveled under truce banners, escorted by 30 Meereenese outriders in turquoise cloaks. Hisdar rode ahead, still hawk-nosed, but now pitiably deferential. Tyrion slept little those nights, kept Quill busy drafting contingency letters to Illyrio, to Ser Jorah, to Daenerys, the last sealed with wax he impressed using the lion head of his childhood ring. If he vanished, the letters would explain. The war must not stall. Meereen rose on the 12th sunrise. A colossal, stepped pyramid of limestone towering over lesser ziggurats like a queen among bridesmaids. Brass harpy statues, their wings devouring sky, perched on nearly every major building. Tyrion found them more grotesque than impressive. Dragons, at least, lived. These idols glorified cruelty in frozen metal. He suppressed a shudder. Grey Worm rode expressionless, but Tyrion sensed tension radiating from his rigid shoulders. Podrick gawked. This was his first view of a city older than Old Town, and nearly rode into a dung cart. Hizdahr apologized for the stench, insisted Meereen would perfume itself before the arrival of Daenerys the Just. Tyrion noticed how the envoy had adopted the epithet. Propaganda sprouted quicker than crops. They stabled in a courtyard at the base of Lesser Harpy Pyramid. Yellow-robed servants offered trays of figs and chilled wine. Tyrion declined both. Never eat a gift until you watch someone else swallow first. Hizdahr guided them through a shaded arcade to a council chamber where 7 marble thrones formed a half-circle. Only 4 were occupied: Lady Malaza of the Red Dunes, Lord Resnack's younger cousin Pal Umpal, and 2 stooped men whose names Tyrion missed amid introductions. Empty seats meant dissent. They began with formal courtesies that set Tyrion's teeth grinding. Fire burned at the back of his throat where he wanted wine. Instead, he accepted water in a crystal flute, sipped, tasted nothing suspicious. Grey Worm stood behind him, spear butt on mosaic floor. Podrick perched near the door taking mental notes. Hizdahr presented the codex scroll. Malaza read aloud its preamble, praising the Mother of Dragons as breaker of chains. Even partially recited, the words carried weight. At the section imposing abolition of slave license fees, Pal coughed politely to raise objection. Tyrion waited for him to finish. Then he launched into a story about a Mirish merchant who lost fortune betting on harpy feather futures. It made little sense, but by the end, Pal's objection had somehow been laughed away. Tyrion closed by reminding them dragons measured wealth in charred property, not coin. By sunset, 2 more houses sent messengers agreeing to seal. Only one remained. House Shiraz, infamous pit fighters turned slavers who controlled the iron foundries. Their representative, a gouty brute named Gorzaz, arrived late smelling of fermented mare's milk. He thumbed through the codex, face brightening each time he reached a fine. Tyrion realized Gorzaz saw only avenues to exploit freedmen through voluntary indemnity contracts cleverly hidden in footnotes. The man thought he'd found loopholes. Tyrion smiled inwardly. The real trap lay in Clause 37. Any contract, voluntary or otherwise, offering exclusively labor in exchange for subsistence pay, could be annulled by the worker after 30 days. Gorzaz signed, too gleeful to read that far. Seals pressed. Wax cooled. Hizdahr sighed relief loud enough to echo. Tyrion offered a toast. Thin barley tea, safe for all. They drank. Formalities ended. Tyrion requested chambers. He and Grey Worm were shown to an austere suite in a lesser wing, Podrick to a scribe's garret. The furnishings were respectable, but the windows had no bars. Meereen cultivated subtle cages. Grey Worm conducted a silent sweep, checked the water jug for residue, sniffed pillows for alkaloid perfumes. Clear, he pronounced. Tyrion collapsed onto a divan and stared at the fresco overhead. A harpy severing a chain with its beak while slaves knelt. Irony so thick it nearly suffocated him. He chuckled, which shook into a laugh, which became a cough. Grey Worm handed him water. He drank and pressed hand to eyes until the room settled. At moonrise, a slave boy delivered a scroll bearing a red silk ribbon. Tyrion unrolled it to find a single sentence in common script. The wine at council was sweetened with dreamvine. There will be no dawn for chains. A friend. His pulse sprinted. Dreamvine. A narcotic that, in high doses, could induce fatal paralysis. He felt no symptoms. Grey Worm sat stoically at door, seemed unaffected. Podrick? He dashed into corridor, nearly colliding with a maid carrying towels. "Podrick Payne," he barked. "Which cup did you drink?" The boy looked confused. He'd had none. He'd been denied refreshments as a lesser. Relief tempered panic. Possibly the dosage was mild, or they were immune by fortune. He reread the note. No dawn for chains. A conspirator within Meereen opposed the masters. Or a slaver seeking to frame freedmen. Suspicion closed around his chest like a vice. He ordered Grey Worm to double night watch. He barricaded doors with chairs and shoved a writing trunk under the latch. Sleep came in jittering waves, each broken by imagined footfalls. At dawn all were alive if groggy. No Dreamvine hangover. Podrick found no servants distressed or missing. Suspicion deepened. Tyrion filed the note in his double-locked traveling case beside Baelish's letter. Secrets nested like scorpions. He must not touch one without risking them all. Later that morning he reassembled the council and made them sign an addendum clarifying the 30-day annulment clause. Gorzaz protested. Tyrion smiled and asked whether Dreamvine wine had clouded his comprehension. Panic flickered in Gorzaz's eyes. He withdrew objection. By midday Meereen's bells rang to announce the Codex of Liberation ratified. Freedmen filled streets, cheering timidly at first, then louder as unsullied detachments appeared beside them. Harpy idols remained intact for now, but cloth banners bearing broken chains were draped over some. Tyrion worried about backlash, but recognized the symbolic momentum. He ordered street criers to remind citizens that new laws punished looters severely. No one should starve under the Queen's mercy, so they need not plunder. When evening cooled the marble corridors, Hisdar escorted Tyrion up 70 flights of narrow stairs to the palace roof. The view took his breath. The Skahazadhan wound silver through wetlands. Beyond, dunes shimmered under violet twilight. Hisdar produced a small gilded box containing 9 silver harpy figurines. "Traditional tokens," he said, "of a city's faith in covenant." Tyrion accepted. Surprised. "I shall deliver them to the Queen," he said. "May they remind her how fragile faith can be." On their descent, a loud crack shuddered underfoot. Stone fracturing somewhere deep. Servants screamed, dust puffed from seams. The pyramid's masonry groaned. Hisdar paled. "Earth tremor," he said. But Tyrion glimpsed something else. A shifting shadow behind a wall lattice, followed by 2 silhouettes slipping away. Sabotage. He raced downstairs, shoulders sending bolts of pain, shouting for guards. Grey Worm intercepted him near landing, eyes sharp. "Collapse near slave kennels," he reported. "No casualties. Structure holds. Cause unknown." Tyrion barked for an investigation. Grey Worm launched at once. Hisdar wrung hands. "Coincidence," he muttered unconvincingly. Tyrion knew better. Someone resisted the Codex. The Dreamvine, the tremor, the shadow behind lattice. Connected threads in a net tightening around reform. That night he wrote urgent dispatches on encoded parchment to Daenerys. Sabotage suspected. Internal enemy within Meereen leadership or slave underground radicalized. Recommend incremental implementation to avoid panic. Suggest immediate arrival of Queen to reinforce legitimacy. He sent 3 copies by separate ravens. He slept lightly, dagger beneath pillow. An old habit from King's Landing revived. Twice he woke to faint stone creaks. Next morning, Grey Worm reported 2 saboteurs captured. Forge apprentices who'd smuggled blasting salts into the masonry. Under questioning, they claimed to serve the Sons of the Harpy, new insurgent cult. Tyrion cursed. Chains, once broken, rattled loudest just before shattering completely. He convened the council, laid evidence. Panic fluttered under their masks of civility. Malaza demanded harsher patrols. Pal suggested public executions. Gorzaz wanted to reopen pits as examples. Tyrion rejected all. "Violence spawns shadow wars," he said. "We offer amnesty to any who disarm." That proposal sparked outrage, but he overruled them, invoking Queen's seal. After the meeting, Hisdar pulled him aside. "Your life is in peril," he whispered. "The Sons will strike again, At you, at the Queen, at everything. Tyrion studied the man. Sincerity or staged anxiety? Too soon to know. Ravens from Yunkai arrived by late afternoon. Daenerys wrote simply, "Hold fast. I come with dawn." The sky obeys still. Tyrion exhaled. Dragons were coming. With them, hope. And deeper fear. He prepared the city, ensured unsullied gates, warned civilians to remain indoors during the arrival, and forbade any gathering larger than 20. He posted Grey Worm's men along every major canal. Podrick delivered writs authorizing free bread distribution during the Queen's visit. Bread pacified stomachs, which pacified riots. Dawn came blazing. The first dragon shadow swept across Meereen's harpy-crowned roofs like a living eclipse. People screamed, cheered, fell to knees. Drogon's roar vibrated every mortar seam. Flame gouted high, a warning without target. Tyrion stood atop a balcony of polished basalt. Cloak whipping, as Daenerys circled once, then guided Drogon toward the pyramid's wide eastern terrace. Viserion and Rhaegal flanked, more controlled than months prior. Drogon landed with a bone-shaking thud. Dust plumed, tiles cracked. Daenerys dismounted, hair tousled by updraft, eyes fierce. Tyrion bowed low. "Welcome, Your Majesty," he said. She clasped his forearm. "Report, dot." He led her through halls still echoing dragon shrieks, summarizing sabotage, Dreamvine, Sons of the Harpy. She listened, jaw clenched. "We will root them out," she declared. They convened emergency council. Masters cowered beneath Drogon's grumbling presence outside doorway. Daenerys decreed immediate destruction of Harpy idols. Masters protested, but she silenced them. Symbols feed rebellion. She commissioned public forums where freedmen could air grievances, to be held daily in the fighting pits. Reborn not for blood, but debate. Tyrion suggested establishing a night watch of mixed freedmen and Meereenese soldiers, sworn to city not house. A man could enlist for life or 5 years. Service granting elevated status and monthly stipend. Daenerys approved. They drafted oath words on the spot, Grey Worm translating into the common street tongue. Reforms proceeded at whiplash pace. The second night, 4 more Harpy statues toppled, pulled by ropes and oxen. Freed crowds exulted. Tyrion worried the scale closing too quickly would smother nuance, yet time was enemy. They rode momentum. On the 4th day of dragon presence, Sons of the Harpy struck, masked men lunging from a crowd at one of the new night watch patrols. Knives flashed, 2 freedmen fell. Grey Worm himself countercharged. Spear thrust clean through a son's bronze chestplate. The others vanished into alleys. Daenerys ordered perimeter sweeps. Tyrion tightened curfew. Jorah led hunts. That evening, as lamplight fractured across the reflecting pool atop the pyramid, Daenerys paced before Tyrion. "We need hearts," she said. "Fear will not hold this city. Then we give them bread, water, justice," Tyrion answered. "And we tell their stories. Let scribes publish the tale of each freedman who opens a shop or teaches a child. Spread hope like coin in market stalls. Then see." She considered, nodded. "You are my ink," she said. "Write their freedom until ink dries. Then we'll make more ink." He smiled, weary but determined. Podrick entered, cheeks flushed, bearing a small block of molded clay. "My lord," he panted, "a merchant asked me to deliver this to you. Says it's from the children of Yunkai." Tyrion took it. Soft red clay etched with a crude drawing. A dwarf holding a pen astride a tiny dragon. Underneath, in shaky Valyrian, the words, "Thank you, Lion Hand." Tyrion swallowed. Years under his father's shadow, he'd thought the world would only remember him as the imp, the monster who murdered moons of innocence. Now here, a child saw instead the hand holding freedom's pen. He blinked hot moisture from his eyes, embarrassed, but Daenerys saw and said nothing. She rested a palm on his shoulder. "We will build a world where even children sculpt new symbols," she murmured. He nodded. They stood together beside the reflecting pool. watching the dragons circle above a city, shedding its chains one link at a time. In the rippled water, Tyrion glimpsed their silhouettes. Dragon wings, queen's braid, dwarf's quill, intertwined like words of a story unfinished. Beyond the pool, distant drums began a slow rhythm. Not the pounding war cadence of conquest, but the measured beat of bricks laid upon bricks, of hammers tapping marble into arches, of hearts learning to sink with hope instead of fear. Night deepened. Stars emerged, countless and cold, yet somehow nearer than in any sky Tyrion recalled. He wondered whether enough ink existed to chart the constellations newly forming in the wake of tethered dragons. He resolved to try, and as the drums lulled the city toward uncertain sleep, Tyrion touched clay Lionhand once more and whispered, half to himself, half to the queen at his side, "Let them come for us in shadow and in fire. We will answer in ink and in light."